From Ed Smith Stadium in Sarasota, Florida, it is the Banner Baseball Live Show. Paul Mancano and Andy Kostka here after our first day of media access here at spring training. And boy, did we start off with a bang, Andy. Mike Elias got in front of the mic, and he was just dropping bits of news after bits of news. We're going to get into all of it. Thank you so much. If you are tuning in live on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, please give us a like, a thumbs up, and comment along as we go. But Andy, let's start with the injuries to the rotation. Let's start with the man who probably would have started opening day if the Orioles had not gone out and acquired Corbin Burns, and that would be Kyle Bradish, who has a UCL sprain.
Yes, this is very noteworthy. You have to imagine that Bradish, if he wasn't the opening day starter, was a huge piece of this team once again, was a phenomenal pitcher last year, broke out as a potential ace in the future, finished, I think, 4th in Cy Young voting. So, yeah, phenomenal season he had last year, about a 1 whip. This is one of those situations where we don't necessarily know the extent of the injury, as in the timeline. Mike Elias didn't tell us too much about the timeline other than that he expects Kyle Bradish to pitch in 2024. They are working to avoid surgery, and to that effect, they had a PRP injection, which I believe you just memorized what PRP.
Platelet-rich plasma.
There you go.
PRP stands for.
Yeah, and there is I
can only say it once.
Yes, that was the only time you're getting it. I'm not even going to try. PRP injections have worked for some players. There's an NIH study in 2021 that I looked into. I think Locked On Orioles first reported that study, so I appreciate Connor Newcomb over there. That study showed that if it's not the most serious level of tear, which sprain would be a partial tear, most likely of the UCL, the PRP injection, along with physical therapy and rest and recovery, all that stuff, can help a player get back to playing shape without a surgery. If it is a more serious variety, surgery is the most likely option. Right now, we don't necessarily know which way it's going to go. We do know Kyle Bradish. This is an injury that started, I believe, in January, Mike Elias said, and Kyle Bradish will begin a throwing progression program tomorrow. So rapidly, but
yeah,
you have to imagine that we do know for a fact that he's starting the season on the injured list, and we'll find out how long he's out this coming season. But whatever the timeline is, I mean, it is definitely a blow.
Yeah, let's hear from Mike Elias, who spoke earlier with the media, detailing everybody there about the nature of the injury and what he could tell us about the timetable.
And that diagnosis revealed an injury that we would characterize as a sprain of his ulnar collateral ligament, and as a result, he's behind. We've got that treated with a PRP injection. The early returns are very encouraging, and everything is in a really good spot right now, and he's going to start his throwing progression tomorrow. But that progression is going to be something that takes some time, and everything is pointed in the right direction and going well right now at this time. But I'm not at a point where I want to start putting a timeline on when we're going to see him in major league action. But right now, we're prepping him for a lot of action in 2024, and we're getting him ready for that as expeditiously and responsibly as possible, but there's going to be some time.
And Andy, you asked the question of Mike Elias how he would compare this situation, how much time and what kind of decisions they have to make here, comparing this situation to the one of Felix Bautista, who we saw last year, had that UCL sprain at the time and was still throwing. The Orioles were still considering their options.
Welcome to Florida as a drag racer goes by the stadium.
Yeah. To repeat that, the Felix Bautista continued his throwing in the bullpen at Camden Yards as they were looking to get into the playoffs and maybe use him potentially in the playoffs. But Mike Elias said today he would not compare Kyle Bradish's situation to that of Felix Bautista in 2023.
Correct. Yeah, it's an interesting case study here because I've seen on Twitter some fans think, why don't you just go ahead and get the surgery? If Tommy John is the way this would have to, go in a couple months, why not get it now? Number one, you never really want to go under the knife. That is an extreme option, an incredibly long recovery Think of John Means, still recovering, and we'll get to him in a second, his situation. But this is a case you don't want to go under the knife if you can avoid it. Mike Elias did not want to compare the two exactly, Felix and what Bradish is dealing with right now, because Felix was throwing because they kind of figured you have the postseason arriving. Why not take a shot and see exactly what you can get out of him, if anything? They decided, of course, that best to shut him down after they did give him an opportunity to throw a little bit. This Bradish situation, they figure maybe they can avoid surgery altogether and have him come back later in the year in 2024. We don't know the exact timeline, of course. I don't mean to push that too far into 2024 without knowing the exact date yet. So not exactly the same as what Felix went through, but definitely, I mean, it goes without saying that a UCL injury of any kind is not what fans wanted to hear, and definitely not what Kyle Bradish would have wanted to hear after a phenomenal 2024 season.
Yeah,
2023 season, excuse me.
Yeah, and Mike Elias was asked if the Kyle Bradish injury accelerated any trade talks, them going out and acquiring Corbin Burns, whether that was in part due to the fact that they were going to be losing Kyle Bradish. And he said, look, we had a need in the starting rotation regardless. And now they have an extra need because you probably still slot Corbin Burns into that opening day slot. The Kyle Bradish injury doesn't affect that. You move Grayson Rodriguez maybe up a slot. We don't know the exact order of the rotation yet. Right. But then you were looking at, lefty John Means maybe being your number 3 or potentially a number 4 starter. Right. And he, unfortunately, after he was shut down last year and did not pitch in that ALDS, was left off the roster. He now is a month behind, according to Mike Elias.
Yeah, and that is, I think Daniel Allen Tucker, the Banner, asked, does that rule John Means out for opening day? And Mike didn't exactly answer. He said you can kind of do the math.
He said if he's behind a month, he's behind a month. So really a circular statement there.
Yeah, so I assume, he could potentially be out. Brandon Hyde did go and say, the manager, Brandon Hyde, said he assumes that John Means is missing opening day. The exact timeline on his, ramp up period, I guess you could call it, is unknown at this point. But you can kind of pencil him in as going to miss time as well.
Yeah.
Part of this is it doesn't appear to be any sort of injury setback. Really, as Paul mentioned earlier, this was more of a case of he was shut down at the end of 2023, didn't pitch in the postseason, which, was unfortunate for the Orioles not to have a guy like John Means pitching at full health. And this is kind of a give him time off in the offseason, put him on ice, I believe was the term that Mike Elias used. Give him basically as much time to rest and heal up as you can. And now he's starting his pitching progression now, which, again, puts him behind the 8 ball a little bit compared to other starting pitchers. You assume that he's not available for opening day, but crazier things have happened.
Now, you look at the rotation now with down 2 starters in Kyle Bradish and John Means. Who do you look to fill in those extra couple spots? Do you think that a trade could still be on the table, or do you think they're just looking at guys like Cole Irvin and Tyler Wells to step up?
Well, there are two gigantic players on the free agent market, and Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery. I would be very surprised if the Orioles went and got either of them. When asked specifically, two lefties. When asked specifically about whether the Orioles are still looking at starting pitching or pitching in general, Mike, as he tends to do, has said they're forever looking. They're working the phones as they usually do. No GM suddenly turns off their phone and says they're not going to look at an amazing deal. So potentially there could be something. But I think there is there's definite comfort level in the team they have right now. You have to imagine if this injury to Kyle Bradish happened in January, the trade for Corbin Burns happened on February 1st. This is nothing that was officially said, but using just connecting some dots here. Corbin Burns was a deal made after they knew of Kyle Bradish's situation, so they feel fairly comfortable with him being, at least at the very beginning of the season, a replacement for Bradish as the number 1, and then you hope that John Means and Bradish come back later in the year. In the meantime, your actual question, I've just ranted for a minute. Yeah, your actual question of who they actually have to step up.
Right.
We saw Cole Irvin out of the bullpen late in the year. Was pretty pretty good out of the bullpen later in the year. Tyler Wells, phenomenal first half of 2023. Expect him to be in the competition for the starting rotation. He had some fatigue, I suppose, of the arm, and then came back late in the year as a reliever and was phenomenal as a reliever too. So part of the consideration here is, Bruce Zimmerman is another guy that, could be a starting candidate.
Sure.
With Chase McDermott and Seth Johnson, I guess, Kate Povich.
Kate Povich,
excuse me. As people that could step up into, fill-in starting roles. But you have to imagine that on paper, at least, when you had penciled in a rotation that included Burns, Bradish, and Means, and probably Dean Kramer, and who else am I missing in there?
Burns, Tyler Wells.
Yeah, Tyler Wells. But you had some pushover to guys would be
Grayson.
You had like maybe Tyler Wells would be in the bullpen. Grayson a lock. I don't know how I forgot about Grayson. You had maybe Cole Irvin in the bullpen. Suddenly, if you push those guys into the rotation, you have then back into the bullpen that you have to fill in. So it becomes kind of a question of there's the drag racer again. I think he's
or a different one.
Maybe a different one. It's Florida after all.
Yeah.
So we you have to figure that there's going to be a new look bullpen. You have Dylan Tate coming back, but this could impact the bullpen at the very beginning of the year if some of the long relievers suddenly become starters.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, please give us some comments, some likes. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And be sure to subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, where you can get 6 months for just a single dollar. Andy and Danielle have been doing phenomenal work there all day and throughout the offseason. And now, boy, we got hit with a bunch of news here on the first day of spring training. But yeah, Andy, I mean, the one thing that I thought of as well after, it was announced that Bradish and Means will likely miss the start of the season, I thought maybe if DL Hall were still here, he would have had a shot to make his way into the rotation, because he was blocked before the Corbin Burns trade and before these injuries happened, because you really couldn't find a spot for him in the rotation. Now is the time where maybe he would have been called upon had he not been sent to Milwaukee in the deal for Corbin Burns as a lefty in the rotation.
I will say that almost emphasizes even more that John, with getting Corbin Burns, Mike Elias was willing to part ways with Dio Hall and Joey Ortiz, knowing that there was an opportunity for Dio to pitch major innings for this, either rotation or the bullpen, whatever it would have been for the Orioles in 2024. So that was the decision they made, knowing, that maybe not knowing the extent of what Kyle Bradish's injury was, but they definitely made it knowing that DL could have played a role. And so that goes into, they really wanted Corbin Burns.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
For good reason. A former Cy Young winner and a 3 year in a row as an All-Star. I think, 3 or 4 years, in a row as an All-Star. Phenomenal pitcher at the top of your rotation. We actually just spoke to him in the clubhouse about 30 minutes ago, and Corbin Burns said, there's no extra pressure on him with an injury to Kyle Bradish. He takes it, you can only be one pitcher. He needs to go out there every 5 days and give Baltimore a chance to win every fifth day. Yeah. And if he does that, you feel great about the trade. You don't know about potentially a long-term extension or anything like that with the sale. But you do feel pretty good about running Corbin Burns out there, even if you don't have Kyle Bradish to run out right after him.
Yeah, I'd make the case that he does the work of 2 or 3 pitchers because of the innings load that he takes every year.
He does take a large innings load. But yes, he was emphasizing that he himself is not going to say, oh my goodness, I need to be 2 pitchers suddenly. He's going to be himself, and himself is pretty good.
Yeah, he certainly, is one person. Can confirm that.
Yes.
Other than the injuries in the rotation, we did hear a couple quick injury notes. One being Gunnar Henderson has an oblique injury that is not expected to be serious. I know the term oblique sounds, dangerous and that you never want to mess with that part of the body, but that is a bit of news. And then the other one is Samuel Bosio, who's rocketed up prospect rankings and is one of the Orioles' top prospects. The catcher will not be throwing in the meantime. They're looking at maybe April as a time when he could be throwing, but in the meantime, he will still DH and be hitting, but will not be throwing from behind the plate.
Yeah, and he'll also catch catch bullpens. Just he can light toss it back, but just won't be making any throws of any serious nature in the time being, which is unfortunate for his development, because one of the things that the Orioles would love to see with Samuel Bosio is that yes, he can play some first base, but you really want to see him develop as a backstop.
Yes,
and see what defensively he can be as a backstop.
That's the area of his game that, according to scouts, does need a little bit of work.
Correct. And this is would have been a phenomenal chance to play some grapefruit league action, catching major league pitching, and there's not too much stealing usually in spring training, but even so, holding runners, just working on that side of the game would have been a gigantic plus for him as a 19-year-old in his first major league camp as a non-roster invite. Instead, we'll get the equally, valuable experience of facing major league pitching as a DH. So that is, it's not a completely written off spring or anything like that. It's still great for Samuel Bosio and his future. But shifting to Gunnar Henderson for a second.
Sure.
Yes, it was described as a oblique aggravation rather than an oblique strain or anything of the more serious variety. Who knew I should have gone to med school?
Yeah, really.
Baseball reporting. But he might need a week or two to get back. He might miss the first week of games for Grapefruit League. But Gunnar Henderson is not a concern to miss opening day. So do not worry too much about that, Birdland.
Yeah, a lot still to happen over the next 5 or 6 weeks as we prepare for opening day. Today's just the first day of media access and the first workout here at the Ed Smith Stadium complex. We'll have complete coverage on the BaltimoreBanner.com. At AF Kostka is his Twitter handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at All Banner Sports, and Danielle is at D_Allen and a lot of position players reporting early, so they don't have to report for several days, but a lot of them are already getting some work in. We've got videos, we've got articles, all that good stuff, and much, much more. So we will definitely be sure to hop on live again at some point during our time here at spring training to do some live chats. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Thanks, comment, like, give us your thoughts. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Andy Kostka, I'm Paul Mancano. We'll catch you next